Welcome everybody to our Tuesday Lunch and Learn, and thank you for joining in. And we'll begin now. And today we're going to talk about a topic really which is something very dear to me in a way. That's something I like to speak a lot about, and especially now as we get close to Rosh Hashanah. And I think about this topic a lot because Rosh Hashanah is a day of judgment. It's a day in which Hashem is going to scrutinize us and look at us and examine our past year to determine really what we need for the upcoming year, and that's the purpose of it. It's not a day of looking to punish, God forbid. It's a day to, like a CEO would for a company, look at the past year to determine what do you need for this new year? What can I do to help you in this upcoming year? That's why we celebrate the judgment so much. We celebrate it because it's the opportunity that God is giving us. He wants to invest in us, but He needs to scrutinize us. He needs to look at us, and at the same time, we have to know that our actions really matter. That life in this world is a serious thing, and we are being looked at. So there's a judgment aspect of the judgment which is a little bit fearful, but there's an aspect of it, and maybe the most important aspect, which is overwhelmingly, just exciting in the sense that we know that Hashem is going to determine what we need. The reality is, it really is a dual emotion on Rosh Hashanah. When you think about the emotions for different holidays, so for example, Sukkot is Zman Simchateinu, it's clearly joy. Pesach, it's clearly joy. Even Yom Kippur, it's clearly joy. That Kodesh Baruch Hu was saying, just speak to me and ask for forgiveness, and I'll undo and turn sins into mitzvot. But what's the emotion of Rosh Hashanah, if we think about it? What emotion are we striving for? On the one hand, it's a day in which my life is being in the balance. What's going to be this coming year? Is life or death, like we say in the Sana Tokef. Is a person going to live or die? They're going to make it through this year. Is it a day? What type of health will I have this year? What type of parnasa, wealth, whatever it might be. It's everything is really on the line, and so therefore it's a degree of fear. At the same time, we know the one judging us is Hashem, who loves us so much. He's our Father, and the purpose of His judgment is, in essence, to determine what we need to perfect ourselves. So therefore, how can we not rejoice in that Hashem wants to look at me, that Hashem cares about me, He's interested in me. So the correct emotion, by the way, is really what David HaMelech said. David HaMelech said, Gila b'ra'ada, rejoice in your trembling. It's a very interesting emotion. Gila b'ra'ada, rejoice, Gila b'ra'ada, in trembling. We have both going on simultaneously. I'm rejoicing that Hashem loves me so much and interested in me, but there's ra'ada, there's a degree of concern of what's gonna be, and we want this year to be in fact sweet as we ask Hashem for, and have the blessings that we feel are blessings that we would like, especially the blessings of health and life, and to ourselves and our families. But there's another part of the day, of the judgment, and this is what I really want to talk about today. There's another part of the judgment in which Hashem judges us to see, have we lived up to the task of being who He created us to be? And maybe that's the most, maybe the most disconcerting part of it. Have we become that person that He created us to be? Not just is He judging us generally, but is He judging, He's judging us according to the level that we're going to really live up to the task of the responsibility of being that unique neshama, that unique soul. And I think that's a little bit scary to some extent, because that means that we really have to look at ourselves and really ask ourselves a question: do I know who I am? Have I discovered what's special about me? And that takes time and that takes work to really dig into ourselves and say, can I come before the Almighty and say, yeah, I'm doing my job. I know who I am. I know my uniqueness. I know my specialness. I've discovered that one quality about myself, or those qualities about myself, or that something I can give to the world that nobody else can give. Hashem, you brought my neshama down because you need me. Have I discovered that? That, I think, is a very scary question, because maybe we don't spend enough time really researching that or digging into ourselves enough to say, like, have I discovered myself? So how do we do that? I guess we'll have to talk about that a little bit. How do we do it? But it really means spending time with oneself and taking a walk, and just with oneself, and leaving the cell phone home maybe, and just trying to go into inside one's mind and one's heart and really one's soul in that respect, and saying, have I figured out who I am? Now, that's going to be a big part of the judgment. And I just want to go through right now a little bit from a Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah. And the Mishnah is a fascinating Mishnah. And the Mishnah addresses this question, and it does it in a very unique way. So let me read the Mishnah to you. And we know the Mishnah, we're talking about the paragraphs or the work put together by Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, which was time after the destruction of the Second Temple. But Judah the Prince really took the oral law and compiled it to what we call Mishnayot, which is very much a way of sort of condensing the oral law in some sort of written form so that we have access to it and won't forget it. But at the same time, it's very much an oral tradition. If you don't have the Talmud, the Gemara, which fleshes it out, it's very cryptic. I'm going to read you from one of the Mishnayot in Rosh Hashanah. And again, there's a cryptic part of this Mishnah. There's a hidden part of this Mishnah, which is so important and so revealing. So let me read to you what it says. It says, "Ba'arba prakim olam nidon." 4 times the year, the world is judged. But Pesach al Tevuot, and Pesach, the world's judged regarding produce. Bi'atzeret on Shavuot, on the Perot Ilan, on the fruits of the tree. But on Rosh Hashanah, Kol Baya Olam Ovim Lefonav K'Bnei Maron. The entire world passes before him, like Bnei Maron. Bnei Maron. Funny word, the word Bnei Maron. What does that mean? Bnei Maron. We'll talk about it in a moment. Shenamar, as it says in Tehillim, Hayotzer Yachad Libam, the one who created their hearts together, Hamevino Kol Ma'asehem, and understands to what extent all their actions reach. Ubechag, and on Sukkot, Nidonim Alamayim. And Sukkot, the world's judge regarding water. This is the Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah, the first Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah. So again, the world's judged in 4 time periods. Let's not discuss Pesach now. We won't discuss Shavuos or Sukkos. Pesach for grains, and Shavuos for fruit, and Sukkos for water. The world's judged regarding how much will be in the world of these very important commodities. But let's speak about Rosh Hashanah. The Mishnah interrupts in the middle, and it changes form. It says Rosh Hashanah. It doesn't say the world's judged regarding man. It says a very interesting language. On Rosh Hashanah, Kol Bayo Olam Ovim Lefanav K'Bnei Maron. The entire world passes before him like Bnei Maron. So most people translate it simply as sheep. We'll offer interesting translations. Shenamar, as it says in the verse in Tehillim, in Psalms, Hayotzer Yachad Libam, the one who creates their hearts together, Hamevin Okol Ma'asehim, and understands to what extent all their actions reach. Interesting statement from King David. All hearts are together, yet Hashem understands to what extent the actions of each individual reaches. And that seems to be the proof text, or the text that fits the word Bnei Maron perfectly. The entire world passes before Hashem, or the court of the Slay Hashem, like Bnei Maron. Now, what does Bnei Maron mean? So let's just look at the Talmud in Tractate Rosh Hashanah, on Yud Ches Amud Aleph 18, folio A. Ask the question, what does Bnei Maron mean? And it offers 3 opinions. So, we say 3 rabbis, 4 opinions. Here we have an example of that. We have 3 rabbis, 3 opinions. It says, what does Bnei Maron mean? Reading it from the Talmud. Here we translate Targimo. The first translation of the Talmud says, Kubnei Amrano. The first opinion of the Talmud says, you know what Bnei Maron means? Well, let's look at the Aramaic translation. The simple Aramaic translation of Amrana means sheep. So the first translation means, on Rosh Hashanah, we pass before God like sheep. What does that mean, that we pass before God like sheep, according to this first translation? I guess sheep, in the language of the Talmud, are always associated with the lack of individuality. And if you look at sheep are very docile. The expression "sheep to the slaughter," as we utilize, not correctly, but about used in the Holocaust, it's not true. But it always implies a certain docility and a certain sameness. Sheep are not individuals; they follow the shepherd. They follow the sheepdog. Whenever the Talmud wants to speak about things that have individuality, it always speaks about goats. By the way, goats are very individualistic. They jump all over the place, do whatever they want to do. That's why many communities have laws. You can't have goats in your town. They'll eat up everything. But sheep are followers. So the first opinion says B'nai Maron means like sheep. And in fact, that's the way it's translated, I believe, when we read in the Sanatokef. Sanatokef is in the Kedusha, and it talks about who will live and who will die, and Yichya and Yamos, that very plaintive played prayer, and that's where the Chazan always says it so emotionally, who by fire, who by sword. But the word is that we go before Hashem like B'nai Maron, and the implication there is like sheep. So sheep is the vision of sameness. Now, that's interesting. It means that the first opinion of the Talmud says on Rosh Hashanah, we're going to be judged all the same. Now, that's true to some extent. There are aspects of being a Jew that we all have in common. For example, when it's Friday night, and this week is going to be, it's going to be 6:34, I forget exact time, it's going to be Shabbos, Shabbat, here in New York. So, David, that was for you. Here in New York, not in Bolivia. So we all know that exactly at that time, we're all going to be doing the exact same thing. The sun is going to set, and we're in Shabbat, we're in Shabbos. So there's a sameness to that. When Shabbos comes in, we're going to be doing the same things. Friday night, lighting candles, we're going to be making Kiddush. How we keep Shabbat is going to be very similar. We're all going to be careful about the laws of Borer. We're all going to be careful about the laws of Bishul, about cooking, separating. We're all going to be sitting down at our tables Friday night and having a meal, and Shabbos day having a meal. Sudah Shlishit. We're all going to be davening the same tefillah. There's a lot of sameness. Kashrut, there's a lot of sameness. We're all commanded that we can't mix milk and meat. We have to eat only from an animal that's shechted, slaughtered in a certain way, that the blood has been taken properly, there's salted. When Sukkot comes around, we're all going to be enjoined to take a lulav and esrog, and we have many things which we have in common. And there is going to be a sheep-like judgment on Rosh Hashanah. To what extent have you followed that which God gave for all of us to do? There are 613 mitzvot, 248 positive commandments, 365 what we call negative commandments, and many of them apply to us. Those that apply to us, we need to do. Those that don't apply to us, we don't need to do. We can't do everything. We're not kings, things like this. Women have to do what men need to do, things like that. But it's whatever we're supposed to be doing, we're supposed to all be doing those things. And so a sheep, judgment as a sheep, means God's going to say, look, as to what extent have you kept that Torah which I've given to you, which you're all obligated in. But, if we stop there, and we said, wait a minute, is that the only level of judgment, that I'm judged like a sheep? I think something would revolt inside of ourselves. I think there would be a feeling that I know that I'm more than a sheep. I feel inside myself that there's a uniqueness about who I am. There's an individuality in who I am. I feel that, we sense that, and we internalize, we know that. In fact, I think one of the greatest insults you can give somebody is to say to a person, you're like everybody else. Or sometimes they use the word cookie cutter. You just come from the same mold. You're just like everyone else. Nothing special about you. That's such a massive insult, because the untruth of it cuts to the core of our being. And the core of our being tells us that I know that I'm different, just please recognize my specialness. Recognize my yichidut, my individuality. Just see there's something special about me. And if nobody could recognize that, we feel lost. We feel totally, geschmettered, we say in Yiddish, just destroyed. And the greatest chizuk sometimes, the greatest strength you could give to somebody is to go over to the other guy. I want to tell you about yourself. I'm so impressed by you, who you are, what you just said, how you said it. Like, wow, you are so special. Sometimes you do that and you let a person know who they are. It's such an amazing sense of strength you give them. You can't imagine how much you do for a person when you do that. Because our individuality is what drives us. There's a unique neshama that says, just know me, recognize me, see me. So if B'nai Maron means we're judged like sheep, I don't know. So what about individuality? Like, I'm not a sheep. I know I have mitzvot that we all have to do, but we're all so different. Maybe, so it's interesting. There's another opinion in the Talmud, Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish says, no, you know what B'nai Maron means? It means like the ascent to Beit Maron. K'mailot Beit Maron. What was Beit Maron? Mailot Beit Maron was a narrow mountain path in the north of Israel. And it was a place that you could only pass through that mountain pass one at a time. So what's Reish Lakish saying? He's saying, no, what does it mean we're going to be judged like B'nai Maron? Don't translate B'nai Maron as sheep. Translate B'nai Maron from the word Mailot Beit Maron, that narrow mountain path in the north of Israel where you have to go one at a time. In other words, what's Reish Lakish telling us? On Rosh Hashanah, you're going to be judged one at a time. What does it mean one at a time? One at a time means you're going to be judged as an individual. You're going to be judged for who you are. I mean, God is going to look at us and say, to what extent have you lived up to be that person that I created you to be? That's what it means to be judged one at a time. Now again, that's a little bit scarier in the sense that, do I know who I am? Like, have I thought about it? Have I got into myself and said, and asked myself that question, who am I? What makes me different? What makes me special? Now, I have a question for everybody, and I'm just going to put it out there right now. It seems to be obvious that the higher level judgment here is to be judged as individuals. That certainly strikes more of a chord in who we are. Even we know that when God gave the Ten Commandments, for example, it's all written in the second person. For example, it says, Anochi Hashem Elochecha. I'm Hashem, your God. The Elochecha means Ata, you, in the second person. It doesn't say Elokechem, your God, in the plural you. It says you, and it says, oh, Lo Tirtzach, you shalt not murder. It's all in the second person, as if the God is saying, I'm speaking to each and every one of you individually. Because you have to see yourself as if I'm talking to you. Because you're not just part of a big group. You have your own uniqueness and specialness. And that seems to be intuitively the higher level of understanding and judgment, and certainly touches a deeper part of who we are, that we're more than sheep. To be a sheep is how could I live with such a concept? I'm just a sheep. No, I'm a unique individual. I'm going through one at a time. So, question, everybody. Why didn't Judah Prince, Judah Nasi, when he wrote this Mishnah, why did he have to use the word B'nai Maron? B'nai Maron, well, the first opinion of the Talmud says, well, the Aramaic translation is B'nai Amrana, which means sheep. It's only Reish Lakish has to come in and says, no, don't read it as sheep, read it as Mailot Beit Maron, the narrow mountain path called Beit Maron. Why didn't Judah the Prince, Judah Nasi, when he wrote this Mishnah, why didn't he simply say, on Rosh Hashanah, we're going to be judged as individuals. We're going to be judged to what extent we lived up to the task of being that special, unique soul that God brought down to this world. Why did Judah the Prince simply say that? Why did he use a word that seems to have both connotations? It's a word which you could interpret both ways. Why is Yehuda Nasi seemingly, purposely being so cryptic, so hidden in that word? Say it straight. On Rosh Hashanah, you're judged as an individual. Why use a word that applies both sheep and individual? Just say who I really am. I'm going to be judged to what extent you've done to the task of being you. I'd like to offer something that the Maral says, the Maral Prague. And the Maral Prague, we know Yehuda Lowy from Prague, one of the great scholar of the 16th century, basically all the 16th century in Prague, one of the greatest philosophical thinkers that we've had in the last 400 years, and his thinking and thoughts and writings are very comprehensive, expansive, and so beautiful. And the Maral asks this question, and he offers such an intriguing answer. And he says that had it simply written, on Rosh Hashanah we're judged like sheep, well, that would have destroyed self-esteem. That would have destroyed who we are. And it's not true. Yet, had the author of the Mishnah written, on Rosh Hashanah we're going to be judged as individuals, there's a danger in that. An immense danger. What's that danger? The danger is as follows. The need to be an individual, the need to be unique is so powerful in the human being that a person might want to jump to that uniqueness, but not realizing that in order to really be unique, there has to be a structure and a pattern to build it upon. Let me explain what I mean a little bit. Supposing a person says that they want to find a cure for cancer. So he says, a wonderful, wonderful ambition. Hope you succeed. What's your plan? Is it my plan? I'm going to go into my basement and I have a chemistry set and I'm just going to take my chemistry set out and get some books and go online and start researching and try to find that cure. We'd look at that person, we'd say, like, don't waste your time. You really want to find a cure for cancer? You really want to do something noble for the world and something so healthy and helpful for the world and productive for mankind? So the way to do it is, well, first you have to spend 4 years in college and perhaps major in biology, and then you have to go to medical school. And then after medical school, perhaps you have to do an internship. And after internship, you have to do some sort of maybe fellowship. And then after that, maybe get involved in some sort of research. And then perhaps maybe after 14 years of investing yourself in the structure of medicine and in the wisdom of those who came before you, maybe you'll find something at the top of the iceberg and you'll be able to say, maybe we could see it like this. Maybe we can move it that way. Maybe I could understand it a little bit like this, and all of a sudden, guess what happens? A discovery is made and something productive would come to the world. I think we'd all agree that's the only way that something real can exist. If it builds on something which is a platform, which has a structure. You know, in art, it's similar. It's a very similar concept that, you know, if a person says, you know, like, I want to be a modern artist, I want to go and I want to express myself, but I don't want to use form and structure. I just want to do it in a way which sort of defies all type of convention. So most people who would say that, I think, would produce work which is probably not worth looking at, except maybe by their mother or somebody like that. But other than that, it's going to be sort of a waste of the viewer's time. I would dare say that anyone who really has done well in modern art is somebody who spent many years studying conventional art, learning to draw landscapes and learning to draw shapes and learning to draw the human being and learning to draw nature in a very exact way. And once they mastered that, then they were able to say, I could shift my eye differently and see the world a little bit askew, but still create something which is so pleasing to the mind and to the eye and to the heart. I think we'd agree that that's the only way that one can produce really, really good modern art. Or even in music, you know, the person says, you know, they want to create some sort of modern music. And the really good musicians, those, especially those who the field of jazz and things like this, are those who really are very good in finding creative type solos and things like that. Are really the best ones are those who really have a classical training. study classical music, understand structure, understand timing, understand music, understand pattern, understand theme, just understand the way music works, and from within the system, they can create something new and really pleasing and to the ear, even if it might not be so tonally in line with Western ideas, but it's still beautiful because it's coming from a system that came before it, and it's fitting patterns that really work. So if that's true for medicine, it's true for art, it's true for music, people forget something, and this is what the Maharal brings out, and this is the major insight of Yehuda HaNasi, Judah the Prince, that in the desire of a human being to want to be that unique and special individual, they're going to forget that the only way to be unique and special is to stand on a platform that allows them to grow and develop. In the spiritual world, in the world of self-development, which is the spiritual world, that means the platform of the Torah. It means the platform of that which is common for us all. It means a platform of the 613 mitzvot. It means the platform of doing those things which we all have to do. For example, when we keep Shabbat, what are we doing? It's true, we're all commanded in it, but it's creating a mindset that there's a spiritual essence to this world. There's a creator. It creates a mindset, not only is he a creator, but he loves me, is interested in me, and that motivates me to try to achieve something. When we're all keeping kashrut, it creates a certain worldview that I'm more than a body, I'm a soul. And if I can't just put anything in my body, I have a soul that has to have food that's correct for the Jewish soul. It can't be a mixture of milk and meat. There's a cruelty in that, and that's going to hurt my soul. So the platform that's common for us all, it's a platform. And once we've mastered that platform, and we're standing on it, and we're getting up every morning, and we're davening, and we're saying, there is a creator, and I'm speaking to him, and I need him, and I have a soul that wants to connect to him, and I'm making a blessing over food, and I'm recognizing, yes, everything in this life, in this world, is invested with a spiritual component, and everything I do matters. And then I'm doing acts of chesed and kindness, but the Torah asked it from me, to give tzedakah, to see the divine nature in another human being, and therefore not speak lashon hara about that person, and be so careful the way I treat that person, what I give to that person, what I do for that person. Once I develop that pattern, God's going to say, well, have you kept the structure? But now once you're in the pattern, you have that platform, so to speak, you're mastering a spiritual approach to life. Then from that platform, can you discover something which is unique to you? You see, if a person's going to jump and say, I just want to be unique, I want to be special, I want to be different, they're going to be something very superficial. It's like the guy who's going to say, I'm going to try to cure for cancer, but I want to skip medical school. A Jew says, I want to be unique and special. Yeah, I have to start mastering the guidelines of what it means to live a spiritual life, what it means to be a life connected to Hashem in everything that I do. I want to master the wisdom of the way God lives and the way God acts and what God wants from me. And from that wisdom, I could find that area, well, this is what I can contribute. This is what I'm good at. This is what I can do. But without that, all we're going to do is create something very superficial and very shallow. And that's not what God is interested in. And there is, in an army doesn't need privates. These officers. To be an officer, you have to have a specialty. You have to know really what you are about. You have to have a platform on which you stand. I'll give you an example of what I mean. This is a funny story a little bit. When I was in college, so I was in Amsterdam at one point, and I remember I was in the train station in Amsterdam, and a guy comes over to me and he says to me, where are you from? And I said, New York. And he said, oh, that's nice. I said, where are you from? And he looks at me and he said, nowhere. So I said, nowhere? What do you mean, nowhere? I was like, interesting. So he said to me, have you ever looked at planet Earth from outer space? And I said, no, I haven't. He said, well, if you were to look at planet Earth from outer space, you would notice something. That you would not see geographic division between countries. You would see one connected, contiguous planet. You wouldn't see a separation between France and Belgium and Germany and Italy. You wouldn't see a connection between Poland and Russia. It would be one whole world. He said, what right do we have to divide the world up into artificial segments? He said, the world is connected and united. He said, therefore, I'm not going to say that I'm from somewhere. I'm really from nowhere, which means I'm from everywhere. That's what he said to me. I said, wow, that's really very beautiful. Thank you for sharing that very interesting philosophy with me. And then he said to me, well, he goes, do you think you could spare $10? I'm a little short. So at the end of the conversation, I realized you could have the most beautiful philosophy in the world, and you could have the strongest desire to do something which is totally unique and different and special, but where does it lead you in life? It leads you to asking college students for $10 in train stations. So, uniqueness has to grow and has to emerge from a foundation of a connected spiritual place. And that's what the Torah offers us. So what Judah the Prince is teaching us is such a magnificent idea. That the author of this Mishnah, Judah the Prince, the Maharal is explaining it to us. The Maharal has explained the Mishnah to us as follows, saying that Yehuda Nasi purposely wrote it in a way where B'nai Maron means two things. He used a word that has two implications. So it's not like the first opinion is arguing with the second opinion, the second opinion is arguing with the first opinion. The first opinion is one aspect of B'nai Maron, which is sheep. The second opinion is, well, let's take that aspect now and refine it even further. And Judah the Prince purposely used a word that has two connotations because there's a danger in writing just one of them. For example, if you said, on Rosh Hashanah we're judged like sheep, that's a danger. It will destroy my sense of self, of individuality. If he said, on Rosh Hashanah we're judged as individuals, I might think I could jump to be an individual without first having to be a sheep. I have to be a sheep first to be an individual. So he used a word that means both of them. And for both of them, one's supposed to go through an intellectual exercise and say, I understand what you mean. You're using a word that has both connotations. Because there's a part of me that does have to be a sheep in order to become that unique person that I need to be. In other words, he couldn't use a word that just says you're a sheep, destroy individuality. And he couldn't just say you're judged as an individual, because a person will jump to be the individual, but will forget that to be an individual, you have to do it with a structure of a spiritual approach to this world, which is Torah. A structure that trains us how to look at God and know that He exists and is real, to look at another human being and know that He exists and He's real in that human being, and then we look at ourselves, that there's a soul inside of ourselves. That's what the Torah is training us a spiritual sense of who I am. Once I know that, then I can find my real inner essence. But if I don't have that platform, what I find is going to be very superficial and so out of the box and probably lead me nowhere. But again, the word implies both. It's interesting, by the way, there's a third opinion in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel, no, don't read it like that. What does it mean? Read Maron as Maros, meaning sovereignty and lordship, or like an army. On Rosh Hashanah, you're going to be judged as part of an army. That's the third opinion. What does that mean? Well, what's the purpose of an army? An army is everybody working together for a unified goal. So that seems to be the end result. Take your sheepness, have a spiritual approach to life, discover your uniqueness, and then place and put your uniqueness into the army of God, into the Jewish nation, and all working together, all utilizing our uniqueness together, we can bring the world where it needs to go. That seems to be the final stage. But then it's the same question we asked in the first two parts. If that seems to be the ultimate goal, why didn't Judah the Prince, when he wrote the Mishnah, simply say, on Rosh Hashanah, you're going to be judged to what extent you fulfilled your mission in this army called the Jewish nation? And the answer would be, in a person's desire to so serve the army, there's a calling inside of us. There's a feeling in every human being that I want to be part of the big picture. I want to contribute. But in our desire to contribute, we would forget that my contribution is really only of value if I first develop myself, And of course, to develop oneself, one needs to have that spiritual platform. So Judah the prince uses a word, b'nai maron, which means sheep. It means a narrow mountain path, individuality. And it means maros, which means an army. The same word, three nuances. The three opinions of the Talmud aren't arguing with each other. It's not three rabbis, three opinions. Each one is giving a more advanced or heightened vision of God's judgment. It has to start with sheep. It has to lead to individuality. And then individuality has to lead to what extent I'm applying myself to this greater picture called the Jewish people. So in his brilliance, he uses a word which means all three. Because to say in Rosh Hashanah, since we're going to be judged as part of the army, I say, okay, I want to serve the army. But, like if we could take medicine as a metaphor, a person says, I want to serve and I want to help people, I want to heal. So I want to just take a medic's course and be a paramedic. Nothing wrong with being a paramedic. But maybe that person had the potential to be a great surgeon. To be a great surgeon, you have to spend time and study and devote yourself to it. In the rabbinic field, there are many people who say, I really want to serve the Jewish people. I'll learn a year or two in yeshiva, and I'll go out and I'll make a difference in people's lives. I would say to such people, that's a beautiful motivation. But if you really want to make a difference in the lives of Jews, you have to spend a number of years learning. You have to devote yourself, 7, 10, then Yaakov Avinu, 14 years. Devote yourself to really gaining the wisdom of the Torah, and then you can make a difference in the world. You need to develop yourself first to be of value, or in a very significant way. Not that anybody who's saying anything is not of value, but to really discover our uniqueness, it takes time. And then we can serve the army. So again, the word maron, b'nai maron, has all three connotations. Because to write one without the other, this is the words of the Maral, would be a tragic error. If it said sheep, destroy individuality. If it's an individuality, I forget I first have to be a sheep. And if it said you're going to be judged to what extent you're part of the army, I would so desire to be part of the army, I forget that to be part of the army, I have to develop myself first. And to develop myself first, I have to develop a platform of spirituality. So the word means all three things. That's the brilliance of that word, b'nai maron, the Mishnah. And the truth is, Hashem is going to be judging us on all three levels of Rosh Hashanah. Have we kept that which is common for us all? Are we living as Jews the way we're supposed to live? We all have the same mitzvot. Are we doing it properly? We work to understand them properly. But then God's going to look at us and say, what about you? Have you discovered yourself? And I created you to be somebody different. Have you spent time reflecting, getting to know yourself? And number 3, we're going to be judged to what extent we're utilizing those special, unique talents we have in order to contribute to this beautiful, glorious picture called the Jewish people. All 3 are going to be part of the judgment of Rosh Hashanah. Now, it doesn't mean that we discover who we are and we just know who we are. And it's not always so simple to find our uniqueness. And I just want to give maybe a few hints to how a person might discover that uniqueness. So, number 1, there's a need to spend time with oneself and enjoy one's own company. The degree to which really one enjoys one's own company is really the degree to which one really has their own inner sense of self. If a person doesn't like being alone, it means the person is not really in touch with who they are. But you should enjoy time alone. Enjoy time driving in the car and just being able to think, or taking a walk. Shabbat is a beautiful time for this in our modern world. Number 2, a very interesting concept that the areas in our life where we'd like to be successful, if we feel like failures, oftentimes is a key that's a place that I'm supposed to try to perfect myself. Why is that? It's because in a place that we have a ratzon, where we have a desire, that desire is coming from a very holy place. Desire in general, a ratzon, a will to do good and to really be something, is from a very holy part of the soul. And if we feel like a failure in that area, it means that there's a Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is stopping us. That the Yetzer Hara is trying to suppress our ability to succeed there. However, if the Yetzer Hara is trying to suppress our ability to succeed there, it's an indication it's because we have tremendous potential there. So I think it's very important to monitor those areas of one's life where one wants to succeed, especially in spiritual activity, yet one feels that I'm not going to succeed. There's a voice that says, you're a failure, you're never going to make it there. That's an indication that the Yetzer is speaking to you there, and that you have great potential. Just on a personal note, I remember in my many years learning in yeshiva, I had a voice in the back of my head that would always seem to speak a language of who do you think you are to be a teacher of Torah? That you're going to be a failure if you try to teach Torah. That's not, who do you're going to fail as a rabbi, as a teacher. Don't try. I heard that voice repeatedly. And looking back in retrospect, and looking at my own life's work, which is really in teaching Torah, I think that perhaps the Yetzer Hara was hitting me in myself in the area where I had potential for personal expression, where I had the potential to be who I'm supposed to be. The flip side is, I don't know, for those who play basketball, right? I've never heard a voice in my head saying, you're never going to play basketball like LeBron James. I've never heard that voice. Why? Because the Yetzer Hara doesn't need to work on me there. Because it's self-evident that that's not going to happen. But where you are supposed to be who you are, that's where the Yetzer Hara hits. So monitor the areas of one's life where one wants to succeed, but one feels like a failure. Number 3, the Chofetz Chaim writes, monitor the areas that one feels a certain attraction to, a certain netiya, pull towards. Might be in whatever it might be, in certain acts of kindness, or certain mitzvot, or certain, there's a certain mitzvah that touches you particularly. That's a pull of the soul, saying that that's an area where you're supposed to have a degree of self-perfection. The Vilna Gaon writes in the other way around, that we're probably, to say something very, very esoteric, we're probably all Gilgulim in this world today. We're all brought back to fix ourselves up. We're reincarnated souls coming back to correct something about ourselves. So usually what we're trying to correct is the area that we failed in the previous time around in this world. So it's interesting, the places in our life that are difficult, things that we have a struggle with, instead of giving up on that and saying, that's not for me, that might be exactly where we're supposed to try to perfect ourselves. We were brought back in the world to fix up that part of ourselves which we didn't perfect before. And maybe our individual uniqueness is going to be expressed in developing that area. So I guess, in my own humble opinion, we have to take all of these into consideration. And we have to think, like the Chofetz Chaim says, and focus on the areas that we have a natural netiya, natural attraction towards, and easy for. We have to look at the areas that the Vilna Gaon points out that are difficult for us to do. Maybe that's the area we have to try to perfect. We have to examine that part of ourselves where we feel the Yetzer Hara speaking and saying you're going to fail, because that's oftentimes an indication that's where we can succeed. And of course we have to spend time with ourselves and just have a dialogue with ourselves and get to know ourselves a little bit better. And really ask ourselves that question, who am I supposed to be? And ask Hashem, of course, for help in coming up to that understanding. Ask Hashem for wisdom and guidance in seeking that answer. But we have to discover it. We have to know it. And that's really what Hashem is asking of us. It's going to be such an important part of the day of Rosh Hashanah. And I think it's such an inspirational concept to understand that there is a uniqueness in who we are. And God really wants us to express it. And God really wants us to bring it out. I wish everybody a wonderful new year, a healthy new year, a year in which you fulfill all the dreams of your heart. Bisharat libech l'tov, and a year in which we get the wisdom to understand what our uniqueness is, and the wisdom to know how we can utilize that uniqueness to help the Jewish people and to help make this world the world that God wants it to be. I wish everybody a Shana Tova.